The moment the buzzer sounded, everything should have been about celebration. 6 straight Final Fours, history, dominance, but instead, the cameras caught something else. A stare. Cold. Unblinking. Lingering just a second too long. And suddenly, fans weren't talking about Dawn Staley's legacy. They were asking a completely different question. What just happened behind the scenes? Because while Caitlin Clark was trending, and Angel Reese's name exploded across social media, insiders started hinting that something bigger was brewing. Something personal. Something that didn't show up on the scoreboard. Fans are shocked. Social media is going crazy. And emotions? They're already running high. Because according to what some people think, this wasn't just a game. This was a message, a warning shot. And possibly the beginning of a rivalry that's about to spill way beyond college basketball and straight into the WNBA spotlight. But here's where it gets even wilder. Unconfirmed reports suggest there was tension in the locker room before tip-off. And even more shocking, some fans believe a private conversation involving Paige Bueckers and Aaliyah Boston may have set everything in motion. Nothing is confirmed, but if even part of this is true, then what happened on the court? That was just the beginning. And what comes next might change everything. Long before that cold stare went viral, before the buzzer, before the headlines, before fans started picking sides, this story had already been building for years. And if you ask around the basketball world, a lot of people will tell you this wasn't just about one game. It was about pressure, or pride, and a collision course that felt almost inevitable. At the center of it all is Dawn Staley, a name that carries weight far beyond wins and losses. She didn't just build a powerhouse at South Carolina. She built a culture, a system, a standard that, according to some fans, leaves zero room for weakness. 6 straight Final Fours doesn't happen by accident. It comes from discipline, control, and an expectation that every player falls in line, or gets left behind. But dominance comes with a cost, because while South Carolina kept winning, a new wave of stars was rising, and they weren't exactly interested in playing by anyone else's script. Enter Caitlin Clark. From the moment she stepped onto the national stage, she wasn't just good, she was disruptive. Deep threes, fearless confidence, and a presence that demanded attention. But fans believe she changed the energy of women's basketball almost overnight. Suddenly, it wasn't just about systems and structure. It was about personality, spotlight, and star power. And not everyone was comfortable with that shift, especially when that spotlight started pulling attention away from established programs like South Carolina. Then came Angel Reese. If Clark was firepower, Reese was intensity. Physical, emotional, unapologetic. Her battles on the court weren't just about scoring, they felt personal. Every rebound, every stare down, every celebration seemed to say the same thing. I belong here, and I'm not backing down. Fans are divided on this, but some believe Reese and Clark didn't just compete. They represented 2 completely different identities in the game. And when those identities clashed, it created moments that people still argue about today. Moments that didn't stay contained to the court. Moments that spilled into interviews, gestures, and viral clips that had social media choosing sides almost instantly. Meanwhile, quietly, but just as significantly, players like Paige Bueckers were watching everything unfold. Bueckers wasn't loud. She didn't need to be. Her game spoke for itself. But according to what some people think, her position in all of this was complicated. She was respected across the board, by fans, by media, by players. But that also meant she was constantly being pulled into conversations she never directly started. Was she Team Clark? Team Reese? Or something else entirely? Nothing is confirmed, but fans have speculated that behind the scenes, alliances weren't as clear-cut as they seemed on TV. And then there's Aaliyah Boston, a cornerstone of South Carolina's dominance. Calm, composed, and incredibly effective. She represented everything the program stood for: consistency, discipline, execution. But as the spotlight shifted toward flashier narratives, some fans believe Boston, and players like her, were quietly being overshadowed, not in performance, but in attention. And in today's game, attention can shape everything, from endorsements to reputation to future opportunities. That's where the tension starts to creep in. Because while teams were competing for championships, players were also competing for something less visible but just as powerful: control of the narrative. And hovering above all of it was the WNBA, the next level, the bigger stage. The future everyone was chasing. Names like Clark, Reese, Buchers, and Boston weren't just college stars anymore, they were projected faces of the league, future franchise players, potential Team USA selections. And according to some fans, that kind of pressure doesn't just push players. It changes how they see each other. Every matchup starts to feel like an audition. Every headline starts to feel like a ranking. Every moment becomes bigger than the game itself. Even Kathy Engelbert has been at the center of conversations, with some people suggesting that the league is paying very close attention to these rivalries, not just as competition, but as marketable storylines. Nothing is confirmed, but fans believe the stakes are higher than ever, because this isn't just about college anymore. It's about who will lead the next era of women's basketball, and who might get left behind. By the time South Carolina stepped onto the court for that game, the one that ended in another Final Four berth, there was already too much history, too much emotion, and too many unspoken tensions in the air. This wasn't just players competing. It was identities clashing, reputations on the line, futures being shaped in real time. And according to what social media is saying, some of those tensions didn't start during the game. They were already boiling over before the first whistle even blew. Which raises a chilling question. If everything looked this intense on the outside, what was really happening behind closed doors? By the time the teams stepped onto the court, the energy didn't feel normal. It felt heavy, like something had already happened, and everyone in the building could feel it, even if they didn't know exactly what it was. From the opening tip, the physicality was different. Every screen hit harder. Every rebound turned into a battle. And every possession felt like it carried something personal underneath it. Fans are shocked at how quickly the tone escalated. And social media immediately started buzzing with theories. Because this didn't look like a typical high-stakes game. This looked like frustration spilling over. Early in the first quarter, cameras caught a brief exchange near the sideline involving players connected to Caitlin Clark's circle and a South Carolina assistant. It was subtle, just a few words, a quick gesture, but fans replayed it over and over. Some people think it was nothing. Others believe it was the first visible crack in what had been building behind the scenes. Nothing is confirmed, but the reactions? Immediate. Then came the first real flashpoint, a hard foul under the basket. Bodies hit the floor. The whistle blew, but the play didn't stop. Players stood over each other. Words were exchanged, and for a split second it looked like things might go further. That's when Angel Reese stepped in, not to calm things down, but to stand her ground. Fans are divided on what happened next. Some believe Reese said something that escalated the situation. Others think she was responding to something that had already been said. Either way, the moment spread like wildfire online. Clips started circulating within minutes. Show with captions claiming everything from heated trash talk to personal shots. And still, nothing officially confirmed. But inside the arena you could feel it. The game had changed. Meanwhile, on the bench, cameras briefly caught Dawn Staley watching it all unfold. Expression locked, arms crossed, saying nothing. And somehow, that silence said everything. Because if there's one thing fans believe about Staley, it's this: she doesn't lose control of her team. So when things started getting emotional on the court, some people began asking a bigger question. Was this chaos? Or was this calculated? As the second quarter unfolded, the tension only got worse. Possessions started ending in stares instead of sprints back on defense. Players weren't just competing, they were reacting. And every reaction added fuel to the fire. Then came another moment that sent social media into overdrive. A camera angle caught what appeared to be a brief interaction between Aaliyah Boston and a player tied to Clark's side during a dead ball situation. There was no audio, just body language. Boston leaned in. A few words were exchanged, and the other player's reaction? A visible pause. Fans immediately started speculating. Some believe Boston was trying to de-escalate things. Others think it was a warning, a message, a line being drawn. Again, nothing confirmed. But the narrative was already spiraling. Because now this wasn't just about Clark and Reese, it felt bigger, like multiple layers of tension were colliding all at once. And then, it happened. Late in the third quarter, with the game still within reach, a sequence unfolded that no one saw coming. A turnover, a fast break, and then contact. Hard contact, the kind that makes the entire arena go silent for half a second before erupting. A player hit the floor and didn't get up right away. Teammates rushed over, opponents backed off, officials stepped in, and, for a moment, everything stopped. Fans are shocked at how quickly the mood shifted. What had been intense suddenly felt dangerous. Social media exploded with clips, slow-motion replays, and heated debates. Was it intentional? Was it just a basketball play? Was there something more behind it? Unconfirmed reports suggest that immediately after the play, voices were raised near the South Carolina bench. Some people think something was said, something that wasn't picked up on broadcast but was heard by those nearby. Nothing verified, but whatever it was, it changed everything. All because when the player finally got up, the look on her face wasn't just pain, it was anger, real anger. And that emotion carried into the next possession, and the next, and the next. From that point on, the game felt like it was teetering on the edge. Every whistle brought reactions. Every missed call brought frustration. And every big play came with an extra layer of intensity that fans couldn't ignore. Meanwhile, the broadcast kept cutting to the bench, to Staley, to Boston, to players whispering, reacting, gesturing, and to one particular moment that fans are still talking about. A quick shot showed a South Carolina player leaning toward a teammate and saying something that caused an immediate reaction, eyes widening, head shaking. No audio, no confirmation, just speculation. But in a game already filled with tension, it didn't take much for fans to fill in the blanks. Some believe it was about the previous play. Others think it was about something that happened before the game even started. Either way, the narrative shifted again. Because now people weren't just watching the game. They were trying to decode it, trying to figure out what was real and what was hidden beneath the surface. And through it all, one thing became clear. This wasn't just about advancing to the Final Four anymore. This was about respect, control, and possibly something personal that hadn't been addressed publicly. As the final minutes ticked down and South Carolina began to pull away, the physical tension didn't disappear. It just changed form. Now it showed up in body language, in who celebrated and who didn't, in who made eye contact and who avoided it completely. Fans noticed everything, and they didn't stay quiet about it. Because as soon as the buzzer sounded, social media exploded. Clips, theories, breakdowns, accusations, everything hit at once. People are divided. Some believe South Carolina simply outplayed their opponent in a tough emotional game. Others think there was something deeper going on, something that hasn't been fully revealed. And then came the first shocking twist. Within minutes of the game ending, unconfirmed reports started circulating online suggesting that a private exchange had taken place near the locker rooms. Not on camera, not officially reported. But according to what social media is saying, multiple players were involved. Voices raised, security nearby, tension still boiling over even after the game was over. Nothing is confirmed, but the story spread fast. Because if true, even partially true, It would mean that what fans saw on the court was only part of the story, and what happened behind closed doors. That might be where the real drama began, which leaves one question hanging in the air. If emotions were this high in public, what really happened when the cameras turned off? If fans thought the drama would cool off after the final buzzer, they were completely wrong. Because what happened next didn't just continue the tension, it poured gasoline on it. Within hours, social media was going crazy. Clips from the game were everywhere. Slow-motion breakdowns, zoom-ins on facial expressions, lip-reading attempts. Hashtags started trending, and fans quickly split into sides. Some defended South Carolina's intensity, others believed something crossed the line. And right in the middle of it all? Names like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese were being pulled back into the spotlight, whether they were directly involved or not. That's when things started to feel bigger than basketball, because according to what some people think, this wasn't just about one game anymore. It was about control of the narrative heading into the WNBA era. And then came the posts. Subtle at first. A tweet here, a caption there. Nothing direct, nothing explicit. But fans noticed. One post, believed by some to be connected to Clark's circle, talked about respect being earned, not demanded. No names mentioned, no context given. But within minutes, people started connecting dots. Was it about the game? Was it about a specific moment? Or was it something deeper? Nothing is confirmed. But the timing? Suspicious enough to spark a firestorm. Then, not long after, in a separate post, this time linked by fans to Reese's side, featured a cryptic message about standing on business and not backing down when it matters. Again, no names. But the internet didn't need names. Fans are divided. Some believe these were just generic motivational posts. Others are convinced they were indirect shots, carefully worded, intentionally vague, but very much aimed. And just like that, the rivalry narrative exploded all over again. Meanwhile, analysts and media outlets began picking up the story. Segments started airing, headlines started forming, and suddenly, what had been speculation on social media started creeping into mainstream conversation. Even Kathy Engelbert's name began circulating in discussions, not because she made a statement, but because fans believe the league is watching very closely. Then some people think this kind of drama is exactly what drives attention. Others worry it could spiral into something harder to control. Either way, the stakes were rising. But the real escalation? That came from inside the locker room. Unconfirmed reports suggest that tensions didn't fully settle after the game. In fact, according to what social media is saying, there may have been lingering frustration among players. Frustration that didn't disappear once cameras were gone, nothing verified. But insiders hinted that emotions were still running high. And then, the second major twist hit. Late that night, a clip surfaced online. Grainy, short, unclear, but explosive. It allegedly showed a brief moment near a restricted area, possibly close to the locker room corridor. The video didn't capture everything, no full context, no clear audio. But what it did show was enough to send the internet into chaos. Two figures, a heated exchange, and what looked like a third person stepping in between them. Fans immediately started speculating about who was involved. Some believe one of the figures resembled a player connected to South Carolina. Others think it might have involved someone from Clark's broader circle. No confirmation, no official statement. But the clip spread fast. And with it, a whole new wave of theories. Was this the rumoured post-game confrontation? Was this proof that things went beyond the court? Or was it being completely misinterpreted? People are divided. Some are calling it overblown. Others are convinced it reveals everything. And the uncertainty only made things worse. Because now, the narrative wasn't just based on gameplay or social media posts. It was based on something that looked real, but couldn't be fully explained. Meanwhile, players like Paige Buchers found themselves indirectly pulled into the chaos. Buchers hadn't said anything publicly. No posts, no comments. But fans began analysing her past interviews, her friendships, even who she followed online. Was she aligned with one side? Was she staying neutral? Or, according to what some people think, was she intentionally staying silent to avoid making things worse? Nothing is confirmed. But in a situation this volatile, even silence became part of the story. And then there was Aaliyah Boston. As someone deeply tied to South Carolina's identity, Boston's presence in earlier moments of the game suddenly took on new meaning in the eyes of fans. Clips of her on-court interactions started resurfacing. That brief exchange in the second quarter, replayed, analysed, debated. Some believe she was trying to keep things under control. Others think she may have been more involved than it appeared. Again, no proof. But the narrative kept growing. Because at this point, people weren't just watching events unfold, they were building stories around them. And every new piece of content, every clip, every post, every rumour added another layer. Even the league itself began to feel the pressure. With the WNBA on the horizon for many of these players, fans started asking bigger questions. Would this affect draft positioning, team chemistry, future locker rooms? Could rivalries like this carry over? And if they did, would they help the league or hurt it? Some people think this is exactly the kind of energy that brings new audiences in. Others worry it could create fractures before players even reach the next level. Nothing is certain. But one thing is clear. This isn't just about one night anymore. It's about what comes next. And just when it seemed like the situation couldn't get more intense, another detail surfaced, quietly at first, then louder. According to unconfirmed reports, a conversation may have taken place involving multiple players and a staff member, one that some believe was meant to address the tension before it spiraled further. But here's the twist. Some fans think that conversation didn't calm things down. They think it made things worse. No audio, no footage, no official confirmation. Just speculation. But in a situation already filled with emotion, pressure, and public attention. Even the idea of a failed attempt to restore order was enough to push the story into overdrive, because now the question wasn't just about what happened. It was about whether anyone was actually in control. And as the noise kept growing louder, one chilling possibility started to take shape. What if this wasn't a misunderstanding at all? What if this was always going to happen? By the next morning, the story had completely taken over the basketball world. Not just highlights, not just analysis, but full-blown debate. Every sports show, every podcast, every comment section, people were talking about it, and not in a calm, measured way. Emotions were running high, opinions were loud, and fans were deeply divided. Some believed South Carolina simply played with intensity and edge, the kind that defines championship programs led by Staley. Others felt like something crossed an invisible line, something that turned competition into something more personal. And because nothing had been officially confirmed, the vacuum of information only made things worse. Fans started filling in the blanks themselves. On one side, supporters connected to Caitlin Clark argued that the physicality and tension looked excessive, pointing to specific clips and moments as proof that emotions went too far. On the other side, fans backing Angel Reese pushed back hard, saying this is what elite basketball looks like: intense, emotional, unapologetic, and right in the middle, confusion. Because without clear answers, every interpretation felt possible. Social media is going crazy. Hashtags are clashing. Fan bases are going head-to-head in real time. And what started as a game has now turned into something that feels like a cultural moment. Even neutral fans, people who just tuned in for the Final Four implications, found themselves pulled into the storm. Because the clips didn't lie. The tension was real, but the reason behind it, still completely unclear. Meanwhile, media outlets began amplifying different angles of the story. Some focused on the physicality of the game. Others leaned into the rivalry narratives that have been building for years. And a few went even further, suggesting that what happened might have deeper implications for the future of the sport. Nothing confirmed, but the conversation kept growing. And then came the emotional responses. Their players, past and present, started reacting, not directly naming names, but posting messages about respect, competition, and keeping the game clean. Some fans believe these were subtle reactions to what happened. Others think they were just general statements being pulled into the drama. Either way, every post added fuel. Every word became a clue. Even silence became suspicious. Names like Paige Bucher's continued to trend, not because she said anything, but because she didn't. Fans dissected her silence like it was a statement in itself. Was she avoiding the situation? Was she protecting relationships? Or, according to what some people think, did she know more than she was letting on? Nothing is confirmed, but in a moment this intense, even staying quiet came with consequences. Then there was Aaliyah Boston. Clips of her from the game kept resurfacing, especially that brief exchange caught on camera. Analysts started debating her role in the moment. Was she trying to calm things down, or was she part of the tension? Fans are divided. Some see leadership, others see involvement. But without context, every interpretation feels like a guess. And that uncertainty? It's exactly what kept the story alive. Meanwhile, attention started shifting toward the league itself. Because whether this situation was isolated or not, people began asking bigger questions about the environment these players are stepping into. With the WNBA becoming the next destination for many of these stars, fans started wondering how rivalries like this might carry over. Would they bring excitement, drama, ratings? Or would they create fractures inside locker rooms at the professional level? Even though Kathy Engelbert hadn't made any public statement, her name kept coming up in discussions. Some people think the league is watching closely, possibly preparing for how to manage personalities, narratives, and expectations when these players arrive. Nothing confirmed, but the pressure is undeniable. Because this isn't just about one moment anymore. It's about reputation. And reputations were shifting in real time. For some players, this moment boosted their image, making them look tougher, more competitive, more willing to stand their ground. For others, it raised questions. Questions about composure, about control, about how they handle pressure when everything is on the line. And in today's world, those perceptions matter. A lot. Because endorsements, in media coverage, and even future opportunities can be influenced by moments like this, especially when they go viral. And this went very viral. But perhaps the most intense fallout came from inside the teams themselves. Because while fans argued online and media debated on air, the players still had to deal with each other. In the locker room, in practice, in conversations that weren't recorded or shared. Unconfirmed reports suggest that emotions didn't fully settle even after the public attention peaked. Some people think there were lingering frustrations, things left unsaid, or perhaps said too directly. Nothing verified, but the idea alone was enough to keep fans speculating. Because if tensions were still present internally, then this story wasn't over, not even close. And as the dust appeared to settle on the surface, one question refused to go away. Was this just a heated moment in a high-stakes game, or the beginning of something much bigger? So now we've seen everything, or at least everything that's made it to the surface. A historic run led by Staley. A game filled with intensity, emotion, and moments that fans are still debating. Subtle exchanges, viral clips, unconfirmed reports, and a story that somehow kept getting bigger with every hour that passed. Names like Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Paige Bucher's, and Aaliyah Boston all became part of a narrative that feels far from over. Fans are shocked. People are divided. Social media is still going crazy. And the biggest question? We still don't have clear answers. Was the tension just part of a high-stakes game? Did something happen behind the scenes that we're only seeing pieces of? Or, like some people believe, are we witnessing the start of a rivalry that's about to carry into the WNBA and completely reshape the league? Nothing is confirmed, but the impact? That's already real. Because this moment didn't just end with a buzzer. It sparked conversations about respect, competition, pressure, and what happens when elite athletes collide at the highest level with everything on the line. And now, it's your turn. What do you think really happened? Do you believe the reactions were overblown? Or do you think there's more to the story that hasn't come out yet? Were those moments on the court just emotion, or something deeper? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We're reading everything. And if you want more high-drama breakdowns like this, where sports meets real emotion and untold stories, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because if this story taught us anything, it's that in this game, the real drama is never over.